Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel getting pumped up on a Friday with you. You heard about the free iHeartRadio app. Make sure you download it and you put Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone as a preset. In fact, buddy down here in San Antonio, he didn't have, or he had the iHeartRadio app, did not know how to listen to The Zone. I was able to set it up for him so that now The Zone is on his preset. Yeah, so he can listen to the Craig Way Show wherever he goes, and you can too. Make sure you put The Zone as a preset. In fact, last note, make The Zone, KVET FM, and 103.1 all presets on your iHeartRadio app so you can listen to Longhorn Sports wherever you are, because that's where the game was last night. That UT women's basketball win against Missouri, 70-61. They were able to crawl back against the Tigers to win that one and then move on now to Texas A&M. Speaking of, head coach Vic Schaefer spoke to the media today, went over a bunch. We're going to hear from him right now. Here is head coach Vic Schaefer's opening statement to the media.
I'm gonna let him get up.
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on a free for all Friday. And we're listening to head coach Vic Schaefer. Now, it's been an open secret that the flu has absolutely torn apart Central Texas. This is not something new. You know about it as well as I do, how deadly, how tough this flu virus can be. And it took out 5 players from last night's roster for the University of Texas. How do you juggle limiting practice, but also knowing you got players coming off sickness, coach?
Thank you.
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. All right. So Madison Booker has had some very fast starts over the past couple weeks. Last night, she was held in the first half, but it was able to bounce back and help rally in that second half. Are you emphasizing a faster start for Booker or are teams just scouting her harder just from the jump, coach?
Yeah, yeah,
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. All right. So, coach, you're coming down the stretch. We're going to the month of February. You're on a 5-game win streak. You're taking on rival Texas A&M on Sunday at 5 p.m. This is cut number 5. Do you see a road to the SEC title? Are you even thinking about that right now? We'll hear more from Coach Schaefer as the program continues. Andrew Zimmel hanging out with you on a free for all Friday. When we return, it is inconceivable, not that it's a Friday. No, it's an inconceivable Friday. That's right, which means it's a Florida Man Friday. Yes. And do we have some stories for you, including a fight in the buffet line? Yeah. We got it all for you over here. Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone.
On terms and conditions. We hear about you. Using from about everyone.
Is it inconceivable that the San Antonio Spurs land De'Aaron Fox? Not quite. Don Harris down in San Antonio says sources Spurs are active and perhaps closing in on a complicated 14 deal that bring De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio. He says, stay tuned. Will stays tuned. Sure, Don. All right, let's talk inconceivable. It's a Florida Man Friday. Now, this first story we start with has to be one of the best we've ever done. And I don't take that lightly. But first, I need you to understand that the man in this story is exactly how you picture him. Whatever you picture in your head, that's exactly what this man looks like. Florida attorneys were recently, a Florida attorney was recently arrested after an altercation at a buffet line became physical, according to U.S. state documents. The incident happened January 18th during a wedding at Boca Lago Country Club in Boca Raton, according to the police report. During a wedding, during the reception, the defendant was allegedly in line at, get this, the prime rib carving station when two young girls cut in front of him. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office alleges. The man, Mark Rohr, got angry about being cut in front of in the buffet line and confronted the father of the girls. Quote, the slimmer man ignored the man yelling at him and did not respond, the deputy wrote. Without provocation, the large, bald man struck the slimmer man on a head with a dinner plate. And thereon, a melee began between a large number of the wedding guests. The man attacked also relayed his version of events. The victim stated that a white male standing behind him became upset that he had been cut in line, and the white male, later identified as Mark Stuart Rohr, walked up and began arguing. The victim stated that he was attempting to remove himself from the situation, and he turned around to avoid further contact. The victim then alleged that he was hit over the head with a plate and shoved. While off balance, the victim grabbed for the collar, who was holding the plate over his head. Yeah. So nothing like going to the wedding. You have your kids with you. You don't think much of it. Maybe you noticed somebody in line. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're just trying to cut, right? Maybe that's the deal. And next thing you know, you're getting hit over the head with a dinner plate. Absolutely awful. Well, when we were younger, we all had curfews, I imagine, right? Your parents said get home before the street lights turn on. Well, this Florida man says he can't go to jail because he has a curfew. That's right. A Winter Haven man who was on probation is back behind bars after deputies say he interfered with a first responder at the scene of a crash. Deputies in Polk County Sheriff's Office were investigating a vehicle crash around 9:30 on a Tuesday when they said 23-year-old Sebastian Angel Suarez approached the scene. Yo, what happened? He said. The deputy said he stopped what he was doing, turned, and explained that there was a crash, and everyone appeared to be doing all right. However, to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, Suarez got within a foot of the deputy and angrily snapped back. No blank, a car crash happened. Who hit who? The deputy told Suarez to step back so the deputies could do the work. He then began cursing at the deputy some more. The deputy explained to Suarez that he was impeding the deputy's work and needed to be moved back or be arrested. At that point, Suarez says, I'm on an ankle monitor with a curfew. You can't do that. You can't take me anywhere. According to deputies, Suarez continued to act out and was uncooperative. He was arrested and charged with violation of probation, interfering with first responder, and then 2 counts of resisting arrest. After he arrived at jail, deputy says Suarez had calmed down and explained that a relative was involved in the crash. The deputies were investigating. So just because you have an ankle monitor, just because you have a curfew, does not mean you cannot be taken. Something to keep in mind. And finally, carnivore diet. You know, everybody's on different diets. Maybe you're on a keto diet. Maybe you are trying to cut back on the suds. Carnivore diet is when you're eating all meat. It's all meat diet, which can be work for some people, and some people it ends up sending you to the hospital with your hands full of cholesterol. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. This happened in Tampa Bay's General Hospital, found that a hard way. He overloaded on cheese and fats on his carnivore diet. So initially, the man said he experienced weight loss, increased energy, and mental clarity, but he ended up having to go to the Tampa Bay General after his limbs began showing painless nodules, according to Vice. The article found the patient's cholesterol exceeded a cholesterol level of 1,000 milligrams, which is a lot, a massive increase from the baseline of 210 to 300. So that's almost what, 5 times more than what you need. Not good. 50% of people develop high cholesterol levels, and they deal with these when you're in your 30s and about 30s to 40s. This is not good. Do not go all out on the carnivore diet if you already have a high cholesterol. And then finally, a Florida man dressed up in a onesie. Yeah, Florida man dressed up in a Dalmatian onesie is being held in his own cage. This article says after fleeing troops in a vehicle and then running away with one handcuffed on. So the man was arrested originally. It appears for I imagine some sort of disturbing of the peace. Seeing a grown man in a onesie already off the bat, that's a tough look in itself. He has one handcuff on. He's able to get out of the police cruiser and then run away. And now we have dash cam video of the man sprinting away from the police wearing this Dalmatian onesie. It really is a sight to behold. It is truly something else to try to wrap your mind around. Again, of all the inconceivables, I do truly believe that this is the best one. Between a man getting hit in the head with a dinner plate, a man having to go to the hospital because he ate too much cheese and meat, the Dalmatian, and then of course a man saying that you cannot arrest me. I have a curfew. I get it. I understand. Curfews are important. All right. When we come back, is it inconceivable for Arch Manning to be the Heisman favorite? No. However, it is inconceivable for you to buy into the hype more than you probably should. Will he be a good quarterback? Absolutely. Will he win the Heisman? History tends to disagree. We'll have that next on the Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone.
Policing and
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way. You can follow me on the socials at Andrew_Zimmel on Twitter and Blue Sky. That's at Andrew_Zimmel, Zimmel. A couple more letters than Way. I get it. It's a little harder to find. All right. So Arch Manning has opened up as the preemptive favorite for the Heisman Trophy. The Texas quarterback opened up as a favorite to win the trophy, sitting atop the odds boards at plus 750. Along with him is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, who opens up as plus 800. He's trying to be the third quarterback in the last few years to win it for LSU, joining Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. Cade Klubnik is also in that group at plus 1200, and Drew Aller is a plus 1200 as well. The first non-quarterback on the board is Jeremiah Smith out of Ohio State at plus 1500. Now, immediately everybody sees these numbers. They get super excited because, yes, having Arch at the top of the leaderboard for the Heisman Trophy does make sense and should get you excited. There's a lot of excitement around the program, the Texas football program right now. I get that. But I went through the last 5 years of preseason favorites. And shockingly, well, maybe not as shockingly, the preseason favorite has never won the award. In the last 5 years, has not won the award. In fact, their likelihood of getting invited to New York to the Heisman ceremony to be the runner-up, to not be on the top 20 of the preseason favorites, the preseason board, is about just as good. So let's go back. In the Wayback Machine, Justin Fields in 2020 opened up as a plus 350 favorite, followed by Lawrence, Jamie Newman, Spencer Rattler, and then, of course, Sam Ehlinger. The winner of the award that year was Devontae Smith, who wasn't in the top 20 of Heisman odd favorites at the beginning of the year. Okay, well, that's not the only one. 2021, Spencer Rattler opened up as a plus 350 favorite, followed by Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and JT Daniels. Bryce Young ends up winning the award. He was the third highest on those odds. But the runner-up was Aiden Hutchinson. Again, not on the top 20 of odds. 2022, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Will Anderson. Caleb Williams wins it. Runner-up, Max Duggan. Wasn't on the top 20 when it comes to these odds. 2023, Caleb Williams wins the award the previous year, so he opens up as the odds-on favorite, plus 400. Heavy favorite. Jaden Daniels is second at 1,100. Drake May, Quinn Ewers at plus 12, and Michael Penix. This is the only time in the last 5 years where you had two finalists. You had Jaden Daniels win the award and Michael Penix, who was in that top 5. And then last year, Carson Beck, odds-on favorite, plus 750. Quinn Ewers was second. Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Jalen Milroe. The winner, of course, Travis Hunter, wasn't on the top 20. Neither was Ashton Genty. Here's my point. We get very excited with the preseason Heisman favorites. We put a lot of stock into saying, hey, this guy is a favorite to win this award. We are in the month of January talking about an award that is given in December. I understand. It's a slow time for college football. The portal is open. Coaches are moving around. Players are probably going to stick around to their teams until after the first spring practices, after players come back and start working out and the depth charts start kind of figuring where guys are out or where guys are. The NFL draft is going to come up. You're going to see some guys go in the draft higher than maybe they expected. And you might see players look at that and say, well, I've modeled my game after so-and-so. We played high school football together. I think I could be in a similar spot, but I'm now playing for a school where I'm wide receiver 5 or running back 4, and I need to go to a place to showcase my talents. Now I'm going to jump. Arch Manning is an exciting player, and we're going to play a little sound from him talking about Pilates and Chick-fil-A a little later in the show. But the hype right now is out of this world. There is not a player currently in college football who has the amount of hype that he is going to walk into this season with. Now, this is a cut from Marty Smith, and I think you have it, Ronald. Marty Smith 1, talking about the level of hype that we might see this season around Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns. Do we have that cut? Let's play it. That is high praise. If you remember Tebow Mania, and it's easy to forget now that we're almost 20 years past the 07 season. Can you believe that? 18 years ago since him winning a Heisman Trophy. The Tim Tebow Mania, to put those words out there and to say like, hey, this is how, that's hyped. That is high praise. And that's something that is going to be, you can either use it as your benefit or your detriment. To your benefit, go get your NIL deals, get your other friends and players, your players, other NIL deals. You know you're going to have more eyeballs on you this season than you probably have ever had in your life. So go get those deals. Go use it to your benefit. Benefit from this. And when the spotlight is the brightest, another benefit, your performance is elevated. Even if you have a so-so game, a game that wouldn't get that much attention if it was on the noon slate on a Saturday, a Vanderbilt, Florida game. But when the University of Texas is playing and you're wearing the burnt orange, now a performance that might have gone under the radar on another campus, on another network, it will be showcased in prime time, odds are on ABC, to millions of people. Use it to your benefit. Don't have it be a detriment. We saw what Tebow Mania did to the players on that Florida team. There have been documentaries, there have been books written about the insane life that those guys had to lead. Between, of course, everybody will talk about, the Aaron Hernandezes and the Riley Coopers of the world, but there's other guys on that roster who had crazy lives. Percy Harvin is the one that comes to mind. Okay. To have that level of spotlight on you, that level of attention, it can be a detriment, and you don't want it to become a detriment. For the Heisman favorites, I look at this and I say, okay, yeah, I'm happy with Arch being at the top of the leaderboard. I'm happy that he's going to be the odds-on favorite coming into the season. But if you want to make real money, scavenge, comb through those other rosters, because odds are the guy who gets invited to New York isn't even in the top 20 on the leaderboard. When we come back, more from Vic Schaefer, including a cool story from his time at Sam Houston State. You don't want to miss it. Coming up after the break, right here on the Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way, Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for the voice of Longhorns, Craig Way, on a free-for-all Friday edition of the show. Want to thank you guys for hanging out as we start our number 2 dose on the Craig Way Show. Lot to get into, including, set your watches, about 15 minutes from now, Craig will be joining the program talking about his travels after yesterday's debacle, having to go taking $100+ Uber ride to Memphis, to fly to Dallas, to fly to Austin, to call the game where Texas women won big. They were able to claw back and beat Missouri 70-61. In that game, Taylor Jones was your leader in the clubhouse, really performed well. 17 points, 6 rebounds in the win. The women's team travels to College Station to take on A&M on Sunday. Also, keeping an eye out on news out of San Antonio, as according to Don Harris, it looks like a 4-team trade is in the works. He said, stay tuned. So we are keeping an eye on that one, as De'Aaron Fox, his preferred destination is San Antonio. You got to remember, too, Jimmy Butler, not happy in Miami. I have to think that there has to be another player in that move, a big name guy, to try to make all this money work and massage it out. The Phoenix Suns with Bradley Beal, even with the no trade clause. So a lot of moving parts. We will see if it ends with San Antonio adding an all-star to put next to their newest all-star, Victor Wembanyama, who gets his first all-star appearance as a reserve, voted on by the coaches last night on TNT. They made the announcement. And look, I have been saying from day one, this is a generational talent, point blank, period. He is the next face of the NBA. And Spurs fans, he is going to be an NBA champion in the Alamo City. Never forget, I'm not wrong. I'm just early. I'm calling it today. Let's hear from Vic Schaefer, though, because the UT women's basketball coach had media availability today and spoke at length about a number of things with the program, but 2 things really stood out to me, talking about his time at Sam Houston State and what it took to kind of build that program up and the expectations, right? So the question was, do you ever stop and talk about what you need to do when it comes to the NCAA tournament and kind of those like next steps? And he spoke about Sam Houston State, where he was an assistant coach at one time, and about how they were trying to build a program there. So let's hear. This is his story talking about Sam Houston State.
You know,
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. That is head coach of the Texas Longhorns, Vic Schaefer, after a win on Thursday night against Missouri, a game where the Longhorns had to battle back, trailed for most of the first half, including actually all the first half, took the third quarter for them to finally take the lead and then not look back. He also spoke about Sydney Carter, who is an assistant coach and is the director of player personnel for the University of Texas. Now, if that name sounds familiar, well, it should. Carter was a standout player at Texas A&M from 2008 to 2012 under Schaefer. During her time in Aggieland, she helped her team win the 2011 national championship and the 2010 Big 12 tournament. As a player, she's a three-time captain, defensive anchor of A&M, earned a spot on the Big 12 all-defensive team in 11 and 12, and additionally, she took home Miss Defense 3 times. She was selected 27th overall in the WNBA, and Schaefer goes on and talks about her impact on this team and her availability around this program. Sports Radio AM, Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on a Friday. Now, this Texas women's basketball team, they have their work cut out for them. This weekend, Sunday, they travel down to College Station to take on Texas A&M in the Lone Star Showdown. That game tips off at 5 p.m. And then a game on Super Bowl Sunday against South Carolina, and then a game against Kentucky and a game against LSU. And it doesn't get easier for Schaefer and company. So the question then becomes, when you look at Texas A&M, when you look at this team, what challenges do they present? This is cut number 7.
Yeah.
Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Andrew Zimmel hanging out with you on a free-for-all Friday. We listened to head coach Vic Schaefer talk about his team as they gear up for a big game this Sunday against Texas A&M. Now, the relationship between coaches in college basketball, especially women's hoops, is a very unique and interesting one because you have situations like the one we have this weekend with Johnny Taylor, who has had Longhorn players on her U.S. national team. And you have a very respectful rivalry in the state, especially in the conference between Texas A&M and Texas. What does your rivalry with Coach Taylor look like?
Yeah.
We'll hear more from Coach Schaefer as the program continues on the Craig Way Show. All-Star game happening in a few weeks for the NBA, and the final announcement for the reserves were given last night on NBA on TNT. Victor Wembanyama, one of the first-time All-Stars, along with a couple other first-time All-Stars, but there's only so many spots on the team, which means somebody gets left out. I'm looking at you, Trae Young. We'll hear more about that coming up later in the show, but first, it's Craig Way joining us from an undisclosed location. We'll find out where Craig is. We will also find out what last night's game told him about this women's basketball team and what tomorrow's game against LSU could mean for the men's team. All that coming up the Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone.
Hey,
Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way. Maybe a one-day future Texas Radio Hall of Famer. His name's on the program. He is in an airport, I imagine. Craig, how was travel today, my friend?
Well, it's in process and in progress. I'm actually at DFW Airport in between, the connecting flights from Austin on my way to Baton Rouge. So in order to go east, you got to go north. So you start off by going north and up to DFW, and now preparing to go east. Well, once I get on the plane at DFW, it'll be southeast, that sort of thing. So all good.
So let's talk about the game last night. You did an incredible job on the call, but you always do. 70-61 win for the Texas women's basketball team. And my question to you is, what is the major takeaway from that win?
Probably that Dick Schaefer's right when he says he's coaching against ghosts. And we talked about it in the pregame as well. In other words, a team that went in at 12-10 and only one win in conference play is still dangerous. And they've been dangerous in some games, even though they only won one. And they pushed Texas. They were up by as many as 9 in the first half. They led by 2 at the half after the Longhorns finished the first half on a 12-3 run. But then they fell behind again out of the gate in the second half. They trailed by 7 at one point in the second half. Then finally fought their way back in, finally got the lead on the Madison Booker 3. And then after that, then Texas started to kick it into high gear. But Missouri wouldn't go away. They hung around and, made it a contest all the way down to the last couple of minutes of the game. I'd say, or last 2.5 minutes, and then Texas was able to push them away. But the final margin of 9 points was their largest lead of the ball game, and they didn't have the lead, as I mentioned, until midway through the third. So, that old thing we've heard. I first started hearing it, I think, from Mac Brown, and then we've heard it from coaches in every sport at Texas. They're going to get the opponent's best shot, and they certainly got a really good shot and a good test for Missouri last night before the women pulled away to win by 9.
Do you think that there's anything that other teams are going to take away? I know South Carolina knocked Texas off once already this season. LSU's coming up on the schedule. Do you think that there's something that Missouri did well that other teams are going to try to copy?
Well, I think always, anytime a good team gets in a fight with another team and really get pushed, future opponents will always look to see if there's some sort of a blueprint they can follow for that. And probably the one thing I think that opponents might take away, but this is nothing new really, is that if you can get dribble penetration into the paint and knock down some mid-range jumpers, you're really going to put yourself in good position to win the basketball game. Missouri shot 64% in the first quarter, and I think over 50% after the half. They hit a lot of mid-range jumpers and a few threes, and if you can do that, you have a chance. The obstacle there is Texas does such a good job, defending on the perimeter and forcing turnovers and backward, and they did a much better job of that in the second half. And then the Longhorns obviously used their length and their size inside to be able to have an opportunity to dominate the glass. And those are the big challenges that upcoming opponents will have, other than, I would say, South Carolina and LSU, because they both have length. They both have size. South Carolina already proved that in the first game. And Texas, I think, also made some uncharacteristic mistakes in that first game that I don't think they'll repeat, in front of the friendly home crowd instead of the hostile 17,000 they saw in Columbia 3 weeks ago.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I guess we have to get the Germ-X and the wash your hands, because the flu did more, I think, to hinder Texas than maybe that Missouri defense.
Well, it was sweeping through the team for sure. They had the flu bug going through them, and it mainly, I think, affected Justice Carlton and a couple of the players, and a little bit to Leah Moore, but her main issue has been the tendonitis in the knee. She was not going to be available regardless last night. So they were all fighting through that. Hopefully they won't have that, although they'll be clear of it when they go to College Station on Sunday to take on Texas A&M.
All right, let's talk about your game you have tomorrow, Craig. LSU, Texas. It's going to be a big matchup, I think, for the Longhorns. This men's team comes off a loss earlier this week. Trey Johnson's been great. What do we think about this game coming into it?
Well, Rodney Terry likes to say he wants his team to be an everyday kind of basketball team. And I've tried to get him to define that in greater detail. And what it means is it really just means, more consistent. play, both in how they run their offense and also in what they're doing in defending. And he really wants them, as he says, to sit down and defend. And in the games they won this year in conference play, that's exactly what they've done. They did it in the second half of the game last Saturday against Texas A&M once they got down 22 points. They rebounded the basketball much better. It was, I think, encouraging that Arthur Kaluma was able to play 32 minutes in the game coming off a knee injury, and hopefully that knee responds well and he's able to go because they're going to need it to rebound against LSU for sure.
Well, I was going to say too, LSU's coming off 3 straight losses to top-ranked teams: Texas A&M, Alabama, Auburn. You do not want to get the wrath of the Tiger on Saturday.
Well, this is another one of those teams that is better than the record indicates. It's another one of those teams that could be dangerous. You know, they were way down Auburn, and they came back and needed a game against the Tigers late before succumbing to obviously the number 1 team in the country in Auburn. So they are dangerous. They have some guys who can shoot the basketball, and I think Texas needs to have a good shooting game. But most important, keep the defensive clamps on LSU to have a good shot to win this game.
Now, what do you think about when we talk about the March Madness aspect of this whole thing? Because I have stood by my take that the regular season is important. You want to get those big wins. But when it comes to SEC tournament play, that to me is the most important thing for this team.
Well, they've got to stack wins, I think, in the regular season for sure. They have to do that, Andrew. And, there's a lot of debate as to how many wins in conference play can land you an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament if you don't win the conference tournament. And a lot of the prevailing wisdom seems to be if you can win even as few as 7 games in this league, the number 1 conference in the country, if you can do that, then you're probably going to get in. 8 wins for sure. An 8 and 10 conference mark would do it, but 7 and 11 in the toughest conference in the country gives you a good opportunity. If you do that, then maybe you don't have to win 2 or 3 games in the conference tournament, because remember, unless you finish in the top 8, you're going to have to win at least 4 games to win the tournament. And if you don't finish in the top 12, then you're going to have to wind up winning as many as 5 games to win the tournament. That's a tough ask to do it. So you want to stack as many wins as you can in conference play.
All right, let's talk about Cam Carter, the senior for LSU. We joked earlier this week. I said every college basketball team has just a smorgasbord. It's like, okay, well, we have a young star, and then we also have a couple transfer portal guys. What can you tell me about Cam Carter, Craig?
Well, like a lot of the players in the SEC, a lot of these guys are really good if you give them too much space, give them an opportunity to create their shot, and then let them be muscular as well, is a good way to put it, around the rim as well. And Carter's one of those guys, just like other teams are finding out about Trey Johnson. Give him enough space and he can do damage to you. So the Longhorns will have to dial in on him for sure and not let him get going. That's the thing about, a lot of these really good players is young players, they get going, then they're hard to stop.
Yeah, it's like an avalanche, man. The baskets keep coming and coming and coming. Is Craig Way? His name's on the program. He is traveling tomorrow. He has the game of the weekend, Texas and LSU. Craig, am I missing anything for you?
I think that's got it. Now it's on to catch a plane.
Catch that plane, Craig. Catch that plane. Thanks so much, man.
You bet, Andrew. Take care. Thanks.
Take care. All right, Craig Way, coming up tomorrow. Big game, Texas and LSU. You can hear that game on the Texas Radio Network, as well as right here on the Zone, KVIT FM and 103.1 as well. Well, when we come back, all-star snubs. Somebody's got to be it. We'll tell you who they were next. The Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig on Sports Radio AM 1300, the Zone.
I try him 3 girls. The debt management group.
Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on a free for all Friday edition of the program. Hope you guys are having a good one as we continue to work our way towards the weekend. Big weekend, too, for UT basketball. Texas takes on LSU tomorrow. That game at 5 p.m. You can hear it here on the radio, the Longhorn Radio Network. You also can hear UT women's basketball versus Texas A&M. That game will be on 103.1 as well, I believe. So let's talk about the All-Star game. Do you care about it? There's a new format. Adam Silver's trying to do everything in his power to make you care about it, including splitting up the teams. What we're going to do is I think we're having a 4 separate teams, and then those 2 teams will play 2 teams, and then we'll have a final game. The point is, we had our final selection for All Stars yesterday on NBA on TNT. Now, there's a bunch of guys, first time All Stars, other players. Let's go through the West. It's going to be Curry, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, and then Anthony Edwards got announced yesterday. James Harden got announced yesterday. Anthony Davis got announced yesterday. Jalen Jackson Jr. got announced yesterday. Sengun from the Rockets was announced. Jalen Williams from the Thunder. Okay. And let's hear the lone representative from the Alamo City. And that is correct. Victor Wembanyama, an all-star for the first time. Congratulations to him. Now let's go down the Eastern Conference. Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis was named. And then the ones named yesterday was Darius Garland from the Cavs, Cade Cunningham, his first time an all-star for the Pistons, Jaylen Brown, the Finals MVP, Pascal Siakam, Evan Mobley, his first all-star appearance, as well as Damian Lillard and Tyler Hero. A player not announced, however, was Trae Young. Yes, Trae Young from the Atlanta Hawks, not named an all-star. People were very upset. Let's hear from the TNT crew about Young getting snubbed. So it would be one thing if Trae Young was on a team that was struggling like the Atlanta Hawks. They're trying to find, they're a 9 seed right now. They're trying to find their way back in the winning way or winning column. They lose a very important piece as well. We'll tell you that about that in a second. But Young, he currently leads the NBA in assists per game at 11.5. He's got great efficiency from the field. His team 9th in the East. He's once again left off the all-star roster. And again, people are not happy about that. Trae Young went online, tweeted about it. Shaquille O'Neal had to take immediate laughter, saying, should Trae Young be disappointed in these results? Yeah, that's the bonus for you. He played 44 games this season, recorded a double-double in 42 of them, so all but 2 games. His 3rd straight year leading the NBA in rebounding. The Kings did take a step back, and, De'Aaron Fox, not exactly thrilled. Now, another name that got left off was LaMelo Ball, who led the way in fan voting. I'll never understand that. That's one of those get off my lawn takes that I have. I guess I'm just aging out of the NBA All-Star voting demographic. I've watched LaMelo Ball play. He's an exciting player. He's not a winning player. He's averaging 28, 5, and 7 this season on a Hornets team that's going to be in the lottery again. But look, the kids love him because he was the #1 fan voted player. Norman Powell in his first season starting after the removal of Paul George has left to go to the 76ers. Norman Powell takes a step up, averages 24, 3-2. And this is, again, his first year as a regular starter. Clippers are pretty good, even without Paul George and Kawhi missing a bunch of time. Norman Powell's somebody people have talked about. And then, of course, Devin Booker. The Suns are a complete mess, but Booker has played really well. 25.5 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. The deal, though, is this, and I've said this for a while, is that every year we do this. Every single season, we have the All-Star Game announcement. We go through the parade. We go through the flowers and the confetti, and we say, congratulations to all these guys for making an exhibition game that, let's be honest, nobody really tries for. I haven't seen an All-Star game that was hyper competitive since Kobe Bryant retired. The last one was in Toronto when Kobe was pushing all those guys to really try to like win the game. That was in 2016. So we've almost had a decade of characteristically uneventful, unenthused games in the NBA. But it's an NBA All-Star roster, and you can't have everybody on it, because at what point do we just keep letting guys on, and then all of a sudden we're complaining about who getting left off? We're upset that Zach LaVine for the Chicago Bulls didn't have an all-star spot. We're upset that Jalen Johnson, that's the player who the Atlanta Hawks will be missing for the rest of the season after a shoulder injury. Are we upset that he won't make an NBA all-star game roster? We start going to the bottom of the barrel. We start losing kind of the thread of this whole thing about caring about who makes the team and who doesn't. These roster spots, even for a game that is meaningless, even for a game that hasn't been very competitive, being an all-star still means something, if not to the checkbooks of these owners. And here's what I mean by that. When you take into account the contracts that some of these players get, they're incentive based a lot of the time. To get the Supermax, you have to hit certain thresholds. You have to be all NBA, have to win an MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, go to a finals, win a finals. There's incentives in these contracts. All-star game incentives exist in most of the NBA's star contracts. If we're giving out the roster spots to everybody, if we're expanding the rosters to 40 apiece for the East and the West, it doesn't really matter anymore. And it starts turning into what the Pro Bowl has turned into. Did you know the Pro Bowl had events last night on Thursday night? ESPN was trying to get me excited for it. I didn't watch a second. I saw the highlights this morning of Sam Darnold throwing dots all over the field in one of the little challenges, wondering where was this in the playoffs, Sam? But the Pro Bowl turned into the most uncompetitive, unwatchable event in sports. But football is different because it's a sport that might kill you if you don't tackle somebody the right way. It's a violent sport. And for guys who are just playing an exhibition game, it doesn't make sense to play a violent sport. Basketball is something that when you pick up and you play in the backyard, you play it against your 5-year-old. Okay? It doesn't need to be what it has turned into, which is guys going up and down the court, lollygagging, throwing alley-oops, half court shots. It's fun for a little bit, but can I get a little competitiveness? I really do want to care about the All-Star game. I really do. But when the number one storyline will be that Caitlin Clark turned down your invitation to shoot 3-pointers, and your second storyline will be that Trae Young got, quote, snubbed from the All-Star game, your All-Star game stinks. That's the problem at this point for the NBA. You got to find a way to make this more competitive. And it doesn't have to come from paying the guys more money. It doesn't have to be that way. Adam Silver could tell these guys, you're making our product look bad here, guys. Being as uncompetitive as this game is, why don't we just cancel it instead of having you guys go up and down the court doing whatever you want to do? All right, that's enough. When we come back, Arch Manning opens up as the Heisman favorite this season to go into 2025. I'm going to explain why that should excite you as a Texas fan, and you shouldn't pay attention to it if you're a gambler. Next, on the Craig Way Show, Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone.
Oh, channel. It's Maxwell. Okay. 800 506 58.
Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel hanging out with you on a feel good Friday edition of the program. Hope things are going good for you and yours as we work our way towards the weekend together. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can at Andrew_Zimmel on Twitter, Zimmel, or on Blue Sky or Threads. We're there as well. We're pretty much everywhere you can find social media except for TikTok, because I told the story earlier this week. I am such a goofball. I deleted the app thinking that we were actually going to have a TikTok ban. Turns out, no, we flipped it right back on. And the problem is, you have the app on your phone, you can use it, but they got rid of it off the Apple and Google store. So if you deleted the app, you can't re-download it. And I have been going around trying to find something to fill my life. Those 60-second videos, you don't know how addicted you are until you don't have it anymore. All right, so Arch Manning opens up as the large favorite to win the 2025 Heisman Trophy. In fact, if you go through it, his odds are sitting at plus 750. Last year, Quinn Ewers odds to open the year were at plus 750 as well, along with Carson Beck. So if this was a year ago, he would be tied for first on the leaderboard. Also, LSU's quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, he sits at plus 800 on the boards. He's trying to be the third quarterback after Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels in the past 10 years to win it. You also look at guys like Clemson's Cade Klubnik at plus 1200. Jeremiah Smith out of Ohio State sits at plus 1500 as well. But when you go through the history books and you look at what preseason Heisman Trophy winners have ended up doing, a lot of them end up being very good NFL players or being drafted high. However, they don't end up winning the award very often. In fact, over the last 5 years, the preseason Heisman Trophy favorite has not won the Heisman Trophy. Let's take you back to 2020. Justin Fields was the favorite at plus 350. Trevor Lawrence, Spencer Rattler, Sam Ehlinger, all behind him. But none of those guys even came close to winning it. It was Devontae Smith's award to win. He was not in the top 20. Wasn't even available on a lot of places to bet to win the award. In 2021, Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, JT Daniels, all the top 5. Bryce Young ended up winning it. But the runner-up was Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive end out of Michigan. Not on the top 20 either. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams were your top 3 in 2022. Caleb Williams wins the award, but Max Duggan out of TCU, again, not even on the board to start the year. 2023, Caleb Williams coming off that Heisman Trophy. Jaden Daniels right behind him at plus 1,100. Drake May, Quinn Ewers at plus 1,200 in 2023. But Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix were the two quarterbacks who ended up coming closest to winning the award. Of course, Daniels winning the award. And then last year, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, and Jalen Milroe were your top 5 before the season. And you had not one, but 2 players who weren't in the top 20 of Heisman odds win the award and finish runner-up. And that's Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. And I think to myself, how exciting it is to have a guy like Arch Manning on the 40 acres. How great it is for somebody like this to be a Longhorn and somebody like this to bring so much attention and intrigue to the program. But at the same time, I think to myself, is the pressure too high? Is this something that we need to worry about when it comes to, is the spotlight going to become too bright for the Texas Longhorns come August? Now, again, long way to go. We are giving odds for an award that's given out in December. We're looking at award and odds 12 months ahead of time. But that's what we do in college football. We look forward. I want to play some sound from Arch Manning. So he signed an NIL deal yesterday with Red Bull, which looked absolutely incredible. If you saw the clips on social media, the team over there for marketing for Red Bull, normally they're dropping guys out of the stratosphere. They decided to stay on the ground, which I'm happy about. And they did an incredible video with Arch yesterday. But I want to play a clip from from the sit-down interview he did with Red Bull and talking about Chick-fil-A and Pilates, if you can believe it. Let's hear it. So everybody tells me how hard Pilates are. And I think to myself, like, yeah, they probably are difficult for somebody like me who's, I can't even describe how out of shape I am at this point. It has its own name, how out of shape I am. But for a guy like Arch, who they've showed a video, or in that video interview, they showed a clip of how cut that QB quarterback room was a season ago with Quinn and Arch and company. And those guys look like Adonis. Those guys look like they were cut out of marbles, cut out of stone. And for those guys to be like, oh man, this Pilates stuff is kind of hard. I do think to myself, those hinge dates that I've turned down saying, like, hey, you want to go to Pilates? I think to myself, I probably did the right thing because it would have been maybe difficult, probably would have embarrassed myself if Arch Manning is having tough with time with it. Lord knows I would. Let's hear about him picking Texas to start his career and what his career has looked like to this point. He wants to bring the Longhorns back to where they were. I said yesterday, and I'll say it again now, that this is a guy who, when you look at the history books of the Texas Longhorns, has a very unique shot to be that bridge quarterback to get them back to where they were with VY and Colt. In fact, I would make the case that there hasn't been two quarterbacks between Quinn and Arch this close together when you talk about like success and future success, then VY and where Colt were. I'm so excited for the Longhorn football season this year. They come in, they're going to be a favorite not only to win the SEC but to win the national championship as well. And with Ohio State winning it this past season after having a loss to their rival Michigan and the expanded playoffs, it really does show that you don't need to try to be perfect throughout the regular season anymore. You just need to be perfect through the playoffs. When we come back, hour 3 of the Craig Way Show continues on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone.
Second.
Good afternoon, Austin, Texas. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig Way on a free-for-all Friday. That is right. Got a lot going on in hour number 3 of the program, including Leah Van from the Chronicle coming on or the Chron out of Houston to talk to us about baseball. Pitchers and catchers getting close to report. Alex Bregman, could he be leaving H-Town? Also, her thoughts on the Dodgers deferring more money than God. Yeah, if the Yankees can't keep up with you, I don't know what is going to happen to that sport. Also, Vic Schaefer, the head coach of Texas women's basketball, speaks after a win yesterday, a 70-61 win over Missouri. Head coach Schaefer gives us an idea of what's going around or going through his mind as we get into the final, or I should say the final month of regular season in February, and a game on Sunday against Texas A&M, as well as, let's start here. Let's talk about the UT women's basketball team. A win yesterday against Missouri, 70-61 was the final score, and it wasn't easy to get it done. It came down to a good stretch in the second half for the Texas women's team. This is a team that had a lot going on. It was a tough time. They've had a lot going on when it comes to the injury and sickness bug. So Texas started the game forcing 2 Missouri turnovers in the opening 2 minutes. Then Taylor Jones connected with a pair of free throws to finish trailing by 7 after 1 quarter, 20-13. And they scored 9 points in the first. Jones opened the second quarter with a layup with a 3-pointer from Lee. Texas went on a 10-0 run to finish the half trailing by 2, 35-33. This is when things get exciting. The Longhorns came back to start the half with 7 points, and this big shot from Booker was the shot to take the lead. This is way one. And you can hear Craig Way on the call on 103.1 yesterday. Take the lead in the third quarter, forced 3 straight turnovers, held Missouri to over a 2-minute scoring drought, ended the third leading 52-45. Booker opened the final quarter with a jumper to lead 62-57. Shea Holly drained a 3 to go up 8, and then the rest is history. Texas moves on now to take on Texas A&M in College Station on Sunday, 5 p.m. tip. The Longhorns improved to 21-2 on the season, 7-1 in SEC play. They've only lost to South Carolina, and they have a rematch against the Gamecocks later in February. Super Bowl Sunday, mark your calendars. Longhorns have won their 5th straight. They're 11-0 in the Moody Center this season and 43-5 in their home arena. This is the 5th straight game for Taylor Jones to have a double figures in her 15th game of the season. And Madison Booker reached double digits for the 17th time this season, which is where we're going to pivot and talk about Madison Booker. So she was on Good Game with Sarah Spain podcast with her head coach, Vic Schaefer, earlier this week. Now, you've probably heard the promos for Sarah Spain's podcast, the former ESPNer coming to iHeart to do a women's sports podcast. And if you haven't checked it out, it's on the free iHeart Radio app, the new and improved. Make sure you use the preset, set the zone as one of your presets so you can follow UT athletics throughout the season. But the podcast is over there. Check it out. This is a clip talking to Madison Booker and Vic Schaefer about Booker deciding to join the Texas Longhorns. Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. That was from the Good Game podcast with Sarah Spain talking to Madison Booker and head coach Vic Schaefer. You can listen to that podcast on the free iHeartRadio app. We'll hear more from head coach Vic Schaefer later in the hour. But let's talk NBA All-Stars because the San Antonio Spurs have one. This is what it sounded last night on the NBA on TNT.
Coaches. Absolutely.
So of the NBA All-Stars, the one that caught the most attention for not making the team was Trae Young. Trae Young averaging 22 and a half, 3 rebounds, and a season high, a player high, 11 and a half assists. So he misses the All-Star game, 4th time in his 7-year career so far. The Atlanta Hawks 22 and 25, 9th in the East. Side note, huge for the Spurs to have Wemby named as an NBA All-Star. Also, Spurs fans have been keeping a very, very close eye on the Atlanta Hawks as they hold their unprotected first-round pick. So I imagine that Spurs fans are like, well, Trae Young didn't make the All-Star game. They're out an impactful player in Jalen Johnson. This could be a very interesting last couple months of the NBA regular season. And depending on where the Hawks end up, Spurs might end up with a pretty high lottery pick as well. But Shaquille O'Neal had thoughts. He was asked the question, should Trae Young be disappointed in not making the NBA All-Star game?
Should Trae be disappointed? It's going slow.
So first off, hilarious. There needs to be a letter of the law. There needs to be a line in the sand. There needs to be a standard for NBA All Star. Okay, well, what is the line? What does it matter? Well, it's just somebody that can play. It's like, okay, cool, cool, cool. So kind of up for interpretation, like being an All Star. So the way I look at it as is this: the Atlanta Hawks aren't winning enough games, and Trae Young, while being a very impressive scorer and doing a very good job of assisting, the team isn't winning. And when you think about all of the great players on bad teams who have, for years, we're talking decades of NBA history, haven't made All Star games because their team wasn't winning. Yeah, that's kind of an important part. Winning the game is the most important part. The other part I have said is that if everybody gets in, it's no longer an All Star game. It's just a free for all. It's an exhibition, and so everybody can join up. And maybe that's what they do. Maybe that's what the NBA does. As the NBA All Star Game continues to get worse and worse ratings, as fewer and fewer people want to sit and watch guys run up and down the court, throwing up half court shots and alley oops and playing a zero defense or less defense than they might on a normal Saturday night game. When we get to this point where they just want to invite everybody, just do that. Have a free for all at an open park, or have a free for all wherever they want to have the All-Star game, preferably in a warmer destination. I know they had it in Milwaukee a couple years ago, and I had some friends who went there. They were not thrilled how cold it was. Just have a free for all. Let them all show up. Whoever wants to play. We pick teams and we just run open court. I mean, that honestly probably would be more competitive. I would argue that the open court runs between NBA players and college players and AAU players are more competitive during the summer months than the NBA All-Star game is in the middle of the season. Another player left off, Sabonis, 44 games this season, 42 of them with a double-double. The Kings cannot catch a break. The Aaron Fox, the trade is still very much up in the air. We will see how that ends up. According to Spurs reporters, we are on the cusp of a 4-team deal between the Spurs, the Kings, and 2 other unknown teams. We'll see how that pans out. We hope that it gets done before our show ends, because I would love to talk about it. But next up, it's Leah Van from the Cronin coming on to talk about baseball. And it's never too early to talk baseball on The Zone. Next on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Because he likes tea. Why'd you out to my Sitting in for the Hall of Famer Andrew Zimmel on Sports Radio AM 1300. The Zone got a lot to get into. We were 8 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And on the phone line with us right now is Leah Van from Cron.com to talk to us about it. How excited are you for baseball season?
I'm very excited. I'm pretty much ready to go. Booked my spring training trip, and yeah, especially since football's kind of been, I guess we've got the Super Bowl, but it's been kind of over for like us Texans, for a while.
Exactly. So I want to start here. Alex Bregman, clearly the biggest story coming out of Houston right now. Where are we right now with the Bregman and Astro talk?
I mean, where aren't we? It's just one of those things where it depends on what minute of the day that we're in. But basically, the Astros, are going to stick to their offer of 6 years, $156 million, and he wants $200 million because the offer on the table is kind of in a way a pay cut by comparison since his previous contract was backloaded. So he was earning $28.5 million per year at the end of that contract, even though the whole entire thing worked out to be about $20 million a year. And this new contract would average, $26 million a year. So it's not actually a pay cut. Obviously, that would make him the highest paid third baseman because Matt Chapman signed a 6-year, $151 million deal last season. But yeah, apparently the Red Sox and the Blue Jays and the Tigers have all kind of been making their pitches to him, and so far it's just, the word is like, oh, there isn't an organization that's really offered that's high on his list. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just constantly ever changing, and I don't know. I don't think he'll be a Houston Astro, but if that is the case, the Astros need to go sign an outfielder or something,
So that's where I was going to go with this, because like I said, we're 8 days away from pitchers and catchers coming and starting the 2025 season. Do the Astros have a backup plan? There has to be something in the works if they can't get their all-star third baseman to re-sign.
Yeah, you would think. And I feel like the clock is ticking, and all the other deals are kind of wrapping up at this point in time. So I feel like, we're all just in a waiting pattern, and the Astros do have a couple of prospects that have some playing experience from last year, just as a product of injuries and stuff like that. You still have guys in the outfield like Chas McCormick and Jake Myers are returning, Jordan, but Chas didn't have a good season last year. And then you've got some prospects like Jacob Melton, Pedro Leon. But it would be nice if they had somebody who was a little bit more of a veteran status and a little bit more of a big name to kind of replace a potential loss in Bregman.
And it sounds like Bregman wants to stay in Houston, or am I just reading every social media post now on X? That it sounds like he wants to be in Houston and they just cannot find a way to get a deal.
Yeah, I think that would be his preference, obviously. I mean, these are his guys, and this is where he's been forever, for his entire career. But I think he also wants to get paid, and I think that he has the right to, want that. It's just, how the Astros are, and even Jim Crane, I talked to him today, and he's like, I'm not gonna, pay I'm not gonna do something that's not good business, and so we'll see what happens. I don't know. It kind of just depends. I mean, I could get off this phone call and he can sign,
and you know what? A lot of that has happened to me recently, where guys just decide to sign contracts right when the show ends. I want to start. You talked about the money, and the Astros are not one of the heavy spenders this offseason, but the LA Dodgers are. They've deferred more money. They've outspent everybody. And Hal Steinbrenner actually brought up that the Yankees cannot compete with how much they're spending. From your point of view, from somebody that covers the game day to day, is this bad for the sport, what the Dodgers have done?
I mean, I don't think it's really that. I mean, I guess it's weird, but no, I don't think it is. I think it's what keeps baseball on people's minds. It keeps people talking. And, every league that has experienced ups and downs, those up years is you have a villain, right? Having a villain to chase is so good for branding. And yeah, the old hags are like, oh, well, if they're going to pay this much money, I'm not going to watch baseball anymore. And it's the same guys who don't want college players to be paid. And guess what? People are watching college football. It does not matter. The spending does not matter that much to fans as people think that it does. It's ridiculous, yes, but at the same time, they have all these big names, and the moment they lose a 3-game series, everybody's gonna go bonkers, and the moment that one of them gets hurt or something like that, again, it's gonna break news. So as far as it being bad for the sport, I think it just adds more fire and spice amongst executives and amongst teams. I don't think fans really care about the spending. And I guess it's annoying to see that many stars on one team when we thought the same thing about like the Golden State Warriors years back. And we thought the same thing about the Miami Heat. We thought the same thing about the Cavs. You know, like every majorly successful sports franchise who has spent an exorbitant amount of money has been annoying for everybody, right? But having that villain is so good because it gives everybody something to chase. Everybody loves to hate in sports. That is our favorite pastime. So you give us any reason to hate somebody or hate a team or hate an organization, we're all locked in.
I love that. And I've said that for a long time that, you know, you can love your team, but you'll hate watch will bring you to the couch. Leah Van from Cron.com talking to us about baseball as pitchers and catchers report in about a week from today. What other stories have you been working on and where can we find them, Leah?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of things in the works. I know I'm talking about an Austin radio station. You know, I'm a Texas alum, but I have 2 Texas A&M baseball stories right now that I'm working on. Doing a lot of interviews about head coach Michael Early and kind of his come up story. And then their starting pitcher, Ryan Prager, why he turned down like $900,000 third round or second round selection with the Angels to come back and play for A&M. And then I'm working on a story actually about Jim Crane and his background in playing college baseball at the D2 level and how that has shaped his career as an executive. And the Astros also added a new strength coach, Stephanie Grubbs, this offseason. And so I'm profiling her as well. And you can find it all on cron.com in the coming weeks and months.
It's my favorite. And I'll tell you what, Leah, reading your tweets and reading your stories about college baseball is great. You take it to another level, the excitement and the love for the sport. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it's fun, it's quirky, and it's something that I think more people should pay attention to.
Leah Van from Cron.com. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Craig Way Show.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
More coming up in a bit, including Vic Schaefer, the head coach of the Texas women's basketball team. He had media availability earlier today, previewed the upcoming game against Texas A&M on Sunday, as well as spoke about his time building programs at Sam Houston State and what does it mean to have Sydney Carter on your coaching staff. He gets into all of that. We'll bring it to you next on the Craig Way Show. Andrew Zimmel filling in for Craig on a free for all Friday on Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Okay. Okay. Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Andrew Zimmel, as we continue to roll along in hour number 3 of the Craig Way Show. If you missed any of the show, make sure you go back and listen to the podcast version of it. We do a pretty good job of cutting them up and posting them for you for your listening pleasure. Leah Van from thecron.com giving us an idea of what is coming up for the Houston Astros this season. I talked about it a little bit earlier this week about Max Scherzer, 41 years old, going to sign a 1-year deal with the Toronto Blue Jays, $15.5 million. And then Justin Verlander signed out west with the Giants as well. So a lot of those older pitchers trying to get that last contract. Alex Bregman, still not signed yet. 30 years old, looking for a long-term deal to get him into his late 30s imaginable. So we'll see if he re-signs with the Astros or ends up going somewhere else. Red Sox are a favorite as well. So ESPN's women's basketball bracketology currently has the 3-1 seeds, if the tournament started today, being UCLA, South Carolina, Notre Dame, and USC. And UT would be a 2 seed, and of course, the host of that Austin region. We will see how that turns out. They have a big schedule coming up down the stretch for UT, including a game this Sunday against Texas A&M, and then games against South Carolina, LSU, Kentucky to go into the month of February. But let's talk about that road to an SEC title in year 1 in the SEC. Vic Schaefer spoke to the media today and was asked, do you see a roadmap for an SEC title? That's Vic Schaefer talking about the roadmap to the SEC title, focusing on one game at a time. Now, Craig Way has brought it up a couple times this week that Schaefer and most of the coaches at the University of Texas, they're not so much coaching against the opponent in front of them, but the ghost of, hey, making sure you don't let down this fan base. This is high expectations, a very high bar set. But Schaefer was asked, do you ever stop and think about where this team is going or what to do when it comes to the NCAA tournament? Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. I love that story about the Sam Houston State putting all the teams in the conference essentially listed and saying like, okay, hey, our goal is not to set the bar of like, oh, we're trying to win the conference in year one. Our goal is to beat the lower half of the conference, make that the stepping stone, and then work our way up. I love that story, and I think a lot more coaches should do things like that instead of trying to take a bite larger than you can chew. What challenges now, though, does Texas A&M present, as that's the game next up on that roadmap for an eventual SEC title for UT fans? Texas A&M this Sunday, 5 p.m. What are some of those challenges, Coach? Now let's jump ahead, Ronald. Let's go to cut number 9. Cut number 9. Now this is a big game for the University of Texas, and clearly it's a big game for Texas A&M when you consider the rivalry at hand. Texas A&M, a civil war in the state. When you pick a side, you die by that side. How do you prepare the younger players on this team, players who may not have ever played Texas A&M before? This is the first year the two teams share a conference since they were Big 12 partners a while, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. How do you prepare the younger players for this rivalry, Coach? Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone, and another one would be Sydney Carter as well, who played at the Texas A&M before now becoming an assistant coach and director of player personnel for the Longhorns. All right, we'll take a quick break, wrap up hour 3 of the Craig Way Show, and send you into the weekend. All coming up next on Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. Sports Radio AM 1300 The Zone. Andrew Zimmel wrapping up hour 3 as well as a week of shows for Craig Way. Want to thank Craig and Cameron for letting me fill in this past couple days. It has been a lot of fun, but I will say the pins and needles that we have been sitting on waiting for something to happen either in Sacramento, either in Chicago, Phoenix, Miami, San Antonio, waiting for one of these dominoes to fall when it comes to the movement of players. And the NBA trade deadline is February 6th. Now, according to Don Harris at WAI in San Antonio, he said that there is pending moves when it comes to the San Antonio Spurs and De'Aaron Fox. Now, this is from Aaron Stills from Sacktown Sports, the home of the Sacramento Kings, over, of course, in Sacramento. He says the Kings are positioning themselves via multi-team deal to acquire 2 impact players if they depart from De'Aaron Fox. They may settle with 1 plus picks, but the current angle is 2 win-now players, according to sources. So it sounds like both teams are on the 1-yard line. It's just finding those other 2 teams to make this deal an official one. Now, the Kings right now are a 10 seed in the West. They're 1 game over 500 at 24-23. The San Antonio Spurs 4 games under 500 at 20-24. It looks like the Spurs are trying to make a push to get into the playoffs in year 2 with Victor Wembanyama. But as things usually happen around here, we have a 3-hour show. We have a 2-hour show. We have an hour show. It doesn't matter. If there's news that's going to break, the minute that the microphones turn off, that is when the news will break. It just always seems to happen that way. We will see what happens. The Spurs tonight play against the Milwaukee Bucks, a home game at the Frost Bank Center. If you really believe that there's something happening, if you really believe that there will be a trade, that they are that close to making a trade happen, then watch the players who will or will not play tonight, because that will give you some insight on how close this trade really is. Now, shifting gears, Texas baseball has a alumni event tomorrow. Texas baseball will host the annual alumni game and fan appreciation day, 2:30 at FCU Disch-Falk Field. Admission to the annual alumni game and fan appreciation day is free. You can get your first glimpse of the 2025 Longhorns under head coach Jim Schlossnagle before they begin the regular season in the Shrine Children's College Showdown, February 14th in Arlington. 2025 home opener is set for the February 18th as UT takes on Houston, and the Cougs should be a good one. Gates open up at 10:30. Autographs are from 10:30 to 11:30, and then there will be batting practice, alumni introductions at 2:20, and first pitch at 2:30. So that if you don't have plans for tomorrow, there you are. You have some plans now. UT and LSU men's basketball tips off tomorrow, 5 p.m. Hear that game right here on the Zone, KVET FM 103.1, and of course on the Longhorn Radio Network. Craig will be on the call. We spoke to Craig earlier in the show. He was making the trip from Austin to Dallas now, I think, to Baton Rouge. I'm not quite sure. Those guys have a geography like a steel trap, a mind like a steel trap. They know where every airport takes you, where every airport won't take you. They know arrivals, departures. I guarantee you that if radio doesn't work out for those guys, seems like it is with Radio Hall of Famer Craig Way, but if radio never works out, they could be flight attendants. That's the amount that those two fly, him and Cam. And then Sunday, UT women's basketball takes on Texas A&M. We've heard from Vic Schaefer throughout the program today about gearing up for that game. Now, my weekend plans, thank you for asking, pretty open. It's another one of those weekends as no NFL games as we wait for Super Bowl Sunday. We have to sit through a Pro Bowl maybe. Odds are I will end up watching the Spurs tonight and the Longhorns Saturday and then Sunday. And I'm back with you again on Friday, barring any issues with flights and travel for UT, Craig, and Camp. Barring any issues, I should be back with you on Friday, but you never know. Could be back earlier, just depending on the flight patterns around the country. So we will be back next Friday, the Friday before the Super Bowl, of course. We'll probably, odds are, talk a little football, and we might even mention the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles as those two teams get ready to take the gridiron. The other part next week will be media week for the Super Bowl. Super Bowl media week is always a incredible event. It is a carnival for media folks. I'm still waiting for my invite. I'm still waiting for them to invite me out there to hang out. So we'll see what happens there. That'll be fun for everybody, right? Something like that. I'm still waiting on the De'Aaron Fox news. I keep refreshing, trying to find when we will get that news because it should be a good one. It really comes down to this, though, to me. You talk to Wembanyama and you say to him, like, hey, what do you want to do? We're in that year, or the age now that keeps Pat Riley up at night. It's the age of the superstar. It's the age of we have to go through our guy. Now, luckily, and I've been telling my Spurs friends this, you got a good one in Wembanyama. You got a kid that is 21 years old and acts like he's 41 years old. I was listening to his press conference after the loss to the Clippers earlier this week, where he was talking about how he doesn't want to be a politician arguing for fouls. The joke is Chris Paul can do that for him. But he's so well put together. He has a good head on his shoulders, which is something that other teams wish that they had. They wish they had a superstar like that who was as well put together. He makes his first All-Star game, the youngest Spur ever to be announced as an NBA All-Star. And I said, hey, complain about the calls, but you're going to get them pretty soon because as the next face of the league, that's the calls you're going to get. You will start getting officials to give you a little bit more leniency. All right, so tomorrow, Longhorn Radio Network, UT LSU 5 p.m. tip, Craig Way on the call, KVET FM 103.1, and of course, right here on the Zone. I am Andrew Zimmel. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew_Zimmel on X and Twitter and everywhere else. Until next time, don't forget, I'm not wrong. I'm just early. See ya. Have a good weekend.